A squall ripped through the tattered sails of the Maelstrom, whipping Captain Maeve O'Connell's hair into a frenzy that mirrored the storm within her. Rain lashed her face, stinging like 1,000 needles, but she barely flinched. Her emerald eyes, usually glinting with cunning, were clouded with a deeper turmoil. They were the color of the sea after a shipwreck, churning with secrets and regrets. Tonight, the Maelstrom wasn't slicing through sapphire waves, but a murky, churning green, the unnatural color a harbinger of the monstrous krakens that haunted these uncharted waters. The stench of sulfur hung heavy in the air, an acrid reminder of the price they were willing to pay for the fabled Heart of Davy Jones. "Captain!" bellowed First Mate Finn, his weathered face more lined than usual with worry. "The storm's worsening. These currents could tear the ship apart." Maeve barked a humorless laugh, the sound swallowed by the howling wind. "Let it tear, Finn. We're not here for a pleasure cruise." Her gaze flicked towards the flickering lantern by the helm, casting an eerie glow on a crudely drawn map. It depicted a treacherous maze of reefs guarding the supposed location of the heart, a cursed amulet rumored to grant immortality. The crew, a motley bunch of scallywags and ex-convicts, shifted nervously on deck. Whispers of mutiny had been simmering for weeks, fueled by dwindling rations and Maeve's growing obsession with the heart. She could feel their discontent like a tangible weight pressing down on her. But fear, especially the fear of Davy Jones' wrath, was a stronger motivator. Legends spoke of the monstrous sea god, his locker a watery prison for the souls of the damned. The heart, some believed, held the power to cheat even Davy Jones' dominion. Maeve needed that power. Needed it more than she'd ever needed anything. It was the only way to atone for the sins of her past, the bloody cost of her rise to infamy. A past she'd buried beneath layers of ruthless ambition and a carefully cultivated persona as the Siren, a captain as merciless as the storms she sailed through. Suddenly, a lookout shrieked from the crow's nest. "Land ahoy!" "But it ain't natural, Captain!" Maeve gripped the railing, her knuckles white. The storm raged on, but ahead, a monstrous silhouette emerged from the churning green. It wasn't land, it was a colossal skull, its hollow eye sockets glowing with an unnatural light. The entrance to Davy Jones' locker. She'd come this far. There was no turning back now. With a steely glint in her eye, Maeve raised her voice, her command cutting through the storm's roar. "Prepare for battle, ye scurvy dogs! The heart awaits!" A ragged cheer echoed back, laced with fear and desperation. Maeve knew they were sailing towards a monstrous gamble, a one-way ticket into the very maw of the sea god himself. But for a chance at immortality, for a chance at redemption, even these grimdark pirates were willing to risk it all. The Maelstrom plunged into the cavernous mouth of the skull, the bone-chilling dampness enveloping them like a cold embrace. The crew braced themselves as the ship groaned, its wooden bones straining against the unseen forces within the locker. The walls of the cavern were lined with the wrecks of ships long lost to the sea, their skeletal remains a silent testament to the folly of those who'd come before. Maeve's eyes narrowed, searching the murky depths for any sign of the heart. Her obsession had driven them all to the edge of madness, and she'd be damned if she didn't find it. Her thoughts strayed to the crewmen and women who'd followed her to hell and back, only to be led into the very heart of darkness. A sudden jolt sent the ship lurching to the side, knocking several pirates off their feet. "Brace yourselves!" Maeve roared, as a tentacle, thick as a ship's mast, shot out from the depths. The creature it belonged to remained unseen, but its power was undeniable. The tentacle wrapped around the Maelstrom's hull, squeezing with a crushing force. The ship's timbers groaned in protest. Finn stumbled over, his face etched with concern. "We can't outfight this, Captain. We need to cut our losses." Maeve turned, her eyes blazing with determination. "This isn't just about the treasure, Finn. This is about answers. I won't let this be our end." With a snarl, she drew her cutlass and leaped onto the tentacle, slashing at it with a fury born of her tumultuous past. The creature roared in response, sending a tremor through the water. The crew watched, torn between fear and awe, as their captain battled the monster. But even as the tentacle retreated, another emerged, and another. The Maelstrom was caught in a deadly dance with the Kraken, the very creature whose waters they trespassed upon. The air grew thick with the scent of blood and brine, and the storm outside seemed to howl in response to the chaos within. Maeve knew this was her moment of truth. Win or lose, she'd face the secrets of the heart, and her own soul. With a battle cry that could have woken the very dead, she led her crew into the fray, the heart of Davy Jones within their grasp, the price of immortality still to be paid. The Kraken's tentacles writhed around the Maelstrom, each strike threatening to snap the ship like a twig. Maeve's crew fought with the desperation of the damned, hacking away at the appendages with swords and axes. Yet, for every one they severed, two more took its place. The ship creaked and moaned, straining against the creature's embrace. Through the tempest, a figure emerged from the shadows of the cabin. Quartermaster Ramsay, once Maeve's most loyal ally, held a sharpened knife, his eyes gleaming with the madness of greed. "This is your folly, Maeve," he spat. "You've led us all to the abyss for a fairy tale." Their gazes locked, and Maeve knew the battle was not just against the Kraken. The storm within her crew had been brewing for too long. She leaped at Ramsay, their blades clanging in a deadly ballet as the ship rocked beneath them. "Finn!" she roared over the din. "Take the wheel! Get us out of here!" Finn nodded, his face a grim mask as he stepped over the fallen. The crew rallied around him, fighting not just for the treasure but for survival. They hacked and slashed, their lives hanging by a thread, as the Kraken's grip tightened. The ship jolted again, sending Maeve and Ramsay tumbling. The Kraken's eye, the size of a ship's hull, peered through the water, a malicious glint reflecting the ship's lantern light. Maeve saw her fate in its cold, unblinking gaze. But she'd be damned if she went down without a fight. Summoning a strength she didn't know she had, she wrestled free from Ramsay's grip and sprinted to the bow, the heart of Davy Jones clutched in her hand. She raised the amulet, its power pulsing through her veins like a tempest. The storm raged around them, the Kraken's tentacles flailing wildly. But as Maeve held the heart aloft, the skies parted, revealing a moon so full and bright, it seemed to bleed into the sea. The water churned, and the Kraken recoiled, its grip loosening. The crew, stunned by the sudden shift, watched as the heart grew hot, almost searing Maeve's skin. A silent scream tore from her lips as she felt the weight of the curse. The price of immortality had never been higher. The silence was deafening, the air thick with the scent of brine and the weight of her decision. The sea stilled, the crew held their breath. And in that moment, Captain Maeve, the Siren, O'Connell faced her darkest enemy, not the Kraken, not Ramsay, but the siren call of power that had led her to this cursed quest. The heart of Davy Jones whispered sweet nothings of immortality, of redemption, but she knew the cost would be her very soul. Her grip tightened around the amulet, feeling the warmth of its power pulse through her veins, beckoning her to make the deal. She could almost feel the chains of fate tightening around her wrists, binding her to the will of the sea god. Her eyes searched the sky, finding no salvation in the moon's cold glow. Then, a chuckle echoed from the depths, a sound like barnacles scraping against the ship's hull. The water churned, parting like a curtain to reveal a figure unlike anything Maeve had ever witnessed. It was a man, tall and skeletal, his skin the color of seaweed and barnacles clinging to his bones like gruesome jewels. His beard flowed like a mass of writhing tentacles, tipped with razor-sharp claws. One eye, milky white and sightless, stared vacantly at Maeve, while the other, a deep, soulless black, burned with an unholy light. A cruel smile stretched across his lips, revealing rows of jagged teeth that glinted in the moonlight. Davy Jones, Lord of the Deep, had arrived to claim his prize. The Maelstrom, battered but free, drifted away from the skull's gaping mouth. The crew looked to their captain, their eyes wide with terror and wonder. But Maeve's thoughts were elsewhere. She'd unleashed something far more dangerous than the Kraken. The heart had whispered to her, promising not just eternal life, but the power to rewrite her past. The price? A pact with Davy Jones himself. The storm clouds parted, revealing the sea god's shadowy form, his grin stretching from ear to ear. Maeve looked into the abyss and knew she had to choose, eternity with the monsters she'd become, or a watery grave. The silence was deafening, the air thick with the scent of brine and the weight of her decision. She could almost feel the chains of fate tightening around her wrists, binding her to the will of the sea god. Her eyes searched the sky, finding no salvation in the moon's cold glow. Ramsay, sensing his chance, lunged for the heart. But Maeve was quicker. With a swift kick, she sent him sprawling into the water. "This isn't for you," she hissed, her eyes never leaving the heart's seductive gleam. The crew watched, their faith in their captain wavering like the candlelight in the cabin. They'd followed her through hell, and now she stood at the edge of a precipice, holding their lives in her hands. Maeve closed her eyes, the weight of her decision heavy on her shoulders. The heart's whispers grew louder, almost a scream. But then, a memory, a fleeting glimpse of a life left behind, a life filled with warmth and light, not the cold embrace of the sea. With a roar that matched the Kraken's, she flung the heart into the sea. The water boiled around it, a maelstrom of power and anger, swirling into a vortex that pulled the creature back into the depths. The sea grew calm once more, the storm retreating to reveal a starlit night. A cold dread seeped into Maeve's bones, a feeling that went beyond the relief of escaping the Kraken's wrath. The heart had fallen silent, its seductive whispers replaced by an unsettling emptiness. As she scanned the crew's faces, searching for a flicker of understanding, a movement on the poop deck caught her eye. Old Man Jim, the grizzled navigator, stood by the railing, his weathered face etched with a peculiar mix of awe and apprehension. In his gnarled hand, he clutched a tattered flag, its once vibrant colors bleached by the relentless sun and spray. But the image in the center was unmistakable, a skull, not the Jolly Roger's familiar grin, but a woman's, her long hair flowing like seaweed. A shiver ran down Maeve's spine. It was the skull of a siren, a chilling reminder of legends whispered in taverns. Those who defy the sea god are forever cursed to wander the waves, forever out of reach of safe harbor. The flag, a relic from a long-forgotten mutiny, had been hidden away for years. Its sudden reappearance felt ominous, a premonition of the trials that awaited them. Maeve swallowed the lump in her throat. The crew deserved to know the truth, the potential consequences of her choice. The crew, silent and stunned, watched as their captain stood tall, the heart's power leaving her, the storm in her eyes fading. She turned to them, her face a mix of relief and resolve. Maeve closed her eyes, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. The heart's whispers grew louder, almost a scream, filling her head with visions of a life unending. Images flickered, a sprawling mansion overlooking a sapphire sea, a life of luxury and power beyond imagination. But these were hollow promises, tainted by the blood she'd spilled to get here. A searing memory pierced the illusion, a young girl with fiery red hair, her laughter echoing through a sun-drenched meadow. Her little sister, stolen from her by a cruel twist of fate. The guilt, a constant companion, gnawed at her. Immortality wouldn't erase that pain, it would only stretch it into an eternity of regret. But a chilling truth echoed in the caverns of her mind. The past couldn't be rewritten, only atoned for. Every life she'd taken, every ruthless act, weighed heavily on her soul. Immortality wouldn't be a blessing, it would be a curse, a constant reminder of the monster she'd become. A tear traced a hot path down her cheek. She wasn't the fearless Captain Maeve anymore. She was Maeve, a woman haunted by her past, desperate for redemption. The heart offered escape, but not the one she craved. With a surge of defiance, she ripped open a hidden pouch around her neck. Inside, nestled against her skin, was a single, crimson feather, a memento of her lost innocence, a symbol of the life she'd thrown away. Clutching the feather, she felt a flicker of warmth, a connection to a time before blood and vengeance consumed her. The heart's whispers faltered, sensing her resistance. Maybe there was no escaping the darkness entirely, but she wouldn't succumb to it. She wouldn't trade her humanity for an eternity of empty power. Taking a shuddering breath, Maeve knew what she had to do. The crew, her crew, deserved a chance at a life beyond this grim existence. They deserved a captain who wouldn't lead them into an abyss. "We've escaped with our lives," she said, her voice hoarse. "But we've lost our way. We're not pirates anymore, we're survivors. And it is time we find ourselves a new destiny." The words hung in the air, a challenge and a promise. They knew their captain had changed, that the siren's call had almost claimed her. But they also knew that she had chosen them over eternal darkness. A wave of emotions washed over the motley crew. Relief. Fear. Disappointment, even, for some who dreamt of the riches a life beyond death might bring. Finn, ever the loyal first mate, stepped forward, his cutlass still in hand, but the anger in his eyes had been replaced with a glimmer of hope. "Where to, Captain?" Old Man Jim, the grizzled navigator, spat into the sea. "Wherever we're headed, it won't be paved with gold. But at least we'll still have our souls." Anya, the young sharpshooter, her hand hovering near the pistol at her hip, spoke quietly. "Are you sure, Captain? That thing, it promised power." Maeve's eyes held a flicker of sadness. "Power at a terrible cost, Anya. We wouldn't have been the same after that." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crew. They didn't need immortality to be feared pirates. They built their legend on cunning and daring, and those were qualities they still possessed. But a new tension hung in the air. The rebellion simmering beneath the surface hadn't vanished entirely. Maeve knew some would still question her leadership, especially in the coming days of hardship. Yet, for now, a fragile trust had been rebuilt. This new path wouldn't be easy. They were battered and bruised, their supplies dwindling. But they had a captain who had stared into the abyss and chosen survival. And that was enough. Finn stepped forward, his cutlass still in hand, but the anger in his eyes had been replaced with a glimmer of hope. "Where to, Captain?" Maeve's eyes searched the horizon, seeing not just the end of their quest, but the beginnings of a new chapter. "To redemption," she said, her voice strong and clear. "To leave the grimdark behind us and find the light." The crew murmured in agreement, their fear replaced with a newfound loyalty to the woman who had turned away from immortality to save them. A salty grin cracked Old Man Jim's weathered face. "Redemption, eh? Sounds fancy for a bunch of scalawags who used to be called Maeve's cutthroats." Maeve's lips twitched at the reminder. They'd earned the name, cutthroats, the hard way, during a brutal raid on a rival captain's fleet in the heart of a hurricane. The storm had been as fierce as their attack, and when the skies finally cleared, they emerged victorious, with pockets full of gold and a reputation for ruthlessness that preceded them by a storm's distance. But that was a lifetime ago, or at least it felt that way. As the Maelstrom sailed onward, the whispers of the heart grew faint, lost to the sigh of the waves. But the shadow of Davy Jones lingered, a reminder of the price of power and the choice Maeve had made. For now, the storm within her had abated. But the sea was vast, and full of secrets. And who knew what other tempests awaited the sharks of the storm on their journey to redemption? The very act of rejecting the heart might have angered Davy Jones, leaving an invisible mark on Maeve and the Maelstrom. A tattered pirate flag, bearing the skull of a siren instead of the Jolly Roger, drifted past the ship, a chilling reminder of the legend: those who defy the sea god are forever cursed to wander the waves, forever out of reach of safe harbor. In the distance, a storm brewed on the horizon, the inky clouds swirling ominously. A squawk echoed from the crow's nest. "Captain? Unidentified ships on the starboard side. Looks like more than one." Maeve's heart hammered against her ribs. Redemption wouldn't come easy. The sea held more than just vengeful gods. It teemed with rival pirates, uncharted dangers, and the ever-present threat of the unknown. The crew of the Maelstrom had escaped Davy Jones' clutches, but their journey towards a new life had just begun. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider subscribing to stay updated with our latest stories, give us a like if you want to see more, and drop a comment below to let us know your thoughts.